are here at Hollywood Smoke in Santa Monica, California. Another edition of 10 Count. Yes, we are back. Steve Kim, Doug Fischer, and Michael Baca. And the thing that everyone wants to talk about, September 16th from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. We are fit to be tied for the middleweight championship of the world. Gennady Golovkin retains his belt with a disputed draw in 12 rounds over Saul Canelo Alvarez. Dave Moretti had the fight scored 115-113 for Golovkin. Don Trella had it dead even at 114-114. And the big score here, Adelaide Byrd, 118-110 for Canelo Alvarez. Doug, there's so many things that we could talk about with this fight. Let's talk about the actual fight first. Your impression after 36 minutes of action?
I was impressed with both fighters. I thought both fighters exhibited what made them special, what got them to that point in their career, what got them to that big dance. I think Gennady Golovkin, his pressure was relentless, but smart and technical. I thought his jab basically dictated the fight. I think his jab is what made him the more consistent of the two fighters in terms of their offense, but he was also defensively responsible. He wasn't moving his head and upper body or trying to shoulder roll like Canelo Alvarez, but he was able to pick off a lot of punches. He knew how to block and take that half step back, but then he gets right back to his jab, right back on the hunt, and he basically, the 35-year-old man, outworked the 27-year-old man, and that, in my book, is very impressive, particularly with a fighter who's voluntarily undergoes VADA testing. With Canelo Alvarez, he showed all-around skills. I've always considered him to be a boxer-puncher, really just a versatile boxer who generally likes to stand his ground, but can move well, who does fight off the ropes very well, who is underrated in terms of his defensive prowess. But I think when I look at the totality of Canelo Alvarez's performance, a term that Larry Merchant once used to describe him, he said he has good ring command.
Yeah.
There was good ring generalship, generally speaking, and he didn't do it enough to win enough rounds to win on my card. But I thought he knew when to stand and trade. He knew when to get on the move. He knew when to get off the ropes. Now he didn't do enough of everything to win the majority of rounds, but he did enough to compete against, hands down, the best middleweight on the planet, and enough to keep from getting badly beaten up, and that's saying something. I thought Canelo Alvarez was every bit as competitive with Gennady Golovkin as Daniel Jacobs. And when you look at Jacobs, you see a physical specimen, a guy who's tall, who's rangy, overall a much better athlete than Canelo Alvarez, somebody who had an extensive amateur career, somebody who's definitely has more speed, probably has more punching power, and yet Canelo Alvarez, a guy who's just kind of average in terms of his natural gifts, his athleticism, who only had between 30 and 40 amateur bouts, just regional level in Mexico. I think that's very much it's impressive. I was impressed with both fighters.
And Michael, you were also in the T-Mobile Arena this past weekend. From your vantage point, what did you see? Who did you have winning?
I had 7-5 in the moment, Golovkin winning. But I was not mad at the draw. Of course, we're all mad at that 110 score of Adelaide Byrd. But I thought the draw was fair. Now, watching it a second time, and I thought you did a good job in the international broadcast with Beto Duran.
Thank you.
I was kind of more impressed the second time by Canelo because of his defensive, understanding. And I've never seen Golovkin miss so often in a fight. And I thought Canelo had the cleanest punches landed in the fight, but they were sporadic. And Golovkin's constant pressure kind of carried these rounds, especially in the middle rounds. I believe starting from the fourth to about the 9th round, it was all Golovkin for me, and Canelo really didn't do enough. He voluntarily went up to the ropes, which was kind of surprising for me.
It's become a habit, I think.
It kind of, but against a fighter like Golovkin, right. I was surprised by it.
But all these years, when you're fighting guys who are past their prime or naturally smaller, like a Josecito Lopez or even a Liam Smith, who a pretty big junior middleweight, but not as skilled as Canelo Alvarez or experienced, he could get away with that. So I think he sort of cultivated that bad habit.
Yeah, but one thing that I find interesting about Golovkin, he's becoming overly selective in terms of his head hunting. I thought there should have been much more body punching and taken from the Rocky Marciano school against Roland Lastarza, where he literally gave this guy blood clots on his arms.
Yeah, hitting the arms and
hitting
shoulders
on the front side,
and elbows.
Yeah. And I asked Abel Sanchez, because this has been a pattern the last couple of fights. When he first came to this country, starting with Proska, he was a devastating and relentless body attacker and puncher. And I said to Abel Monday night, I said, Abel, what happened? He said, Steve, it's frustrating, but I was asking him to at least keep his punches lower, because he missed a lot of right hands over the top as Canelo slid over to the left. He was trying to set that up. One thing about Canelo, when you talk about his head movement, Doug, there's a Mexican stereotype that is held against Canelo. And you go back to Austin Trout, Canelo moves his head well and his upper body, and he hides himself well and he slips. Golovkin, to me, should have been throwing more body shots, but then Abel says, Steve, if he gets countered over the top with the right hands, that's going to impede how you proceed forward. So there's a bit of a cat and mouse game there. I had Canelo winning some rounds, a lot of rounds in fact, but I get the sense it was a 7-5, 8-4 Golovkin win, with Canelo actually coming out with heightened respect. Now,
he should have come out with heightened respect, but because of Adelaide Byrd's scorecard, do you guys get the sense that he's getting respect that he should have earned during those 12 rounds of combat?
I think one of the problems people have with that scorecard, and first of all, 118, 110 doesn't belong on either way.
Right. For
Golovkin as well. I think when people are watching, especially in this setting where a lot of casuals are watching, and I think their eyes, when they see the guy going forward and initiating the fight like Golovkin did, they're going to favor him. And I think we do that just a little bit, even if it's just slightly. Now, because these guys are, everything's kind of heightened in this fight because of the figures that they are. And that's why it was a very intense chess match, but it wasn't necessarily a war, but it's a great fight because everything's intensified. Now we look at the score afterwards by Adelaide Byrd, and that's going to be intensified even more, because if she had it 7-5 Canelo, we're not having this conversation right now.
It wouldn't have been as controversial.
Exactly, because I thought the draw was fair. I don't know about you guys.
I mean, I thought
it was.
Let me ask you this: you said you were more impressed with Canelo on second viewing. Did that change your scorecard?
No, I had
live. You had it 7-5.
I still had it 7-5 Golovkin, but it was just the second watching. I noticed a little more things from Canelo.
On my second watching, I had it 8-4 for Golovkin.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had it 7-5, and it felt more like 8-4, and I was judging by the Vegas curve. The one narrative that I disagree with, that I've heard a lot on Twitter, is that Canelo won the first 3 and the last 3. That's awfully convenient. Let me just say this: the first 3 rounds, I thought Golovkin could have won the first, but on the Vegas curve, I give it to Canelo.
Right.
I thought from round 3 on, I noticed Golovkin had kind of gauged everything, the power, the speed, the quickness. He seemed to jump out at Canelo off the stool. 10, 11, 12, I thought was interesting. I thought Canelo definitely won the 12th. 10 and 11, I thought could have gone either way. So this whole thing that somehow he lost the first 3 and the last 3, I mean,
that's giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, and by the way, we have to go to Don Trella.
Yes.
Right.
Don Trella had it 114, which I don't think is out of the question, right? Because you have it kind of in the same range.
Yeah. It doesn't seem unreasonable on the face of it.
But the 7th round was one of those rounds where I said to myself, and I was like 2 seats from you, Doug, I said, this kind of looks like Margarito Cotto 1. Seems to me like the more sharper technical guy is getting worn down, he's huffing and puffing, his legs are fading. There could be a flat tire here. And I said, that is definitely a Golovkin round. Trella, please. Trella, please. And he gives that one to Canelo. And if he scores it the other way, and the biggest indictment of that round, Doug, is that even Adelaide Byrd gave
scored
that
it for
round to Golovkin.
I mean, she couldn't take it away from Golovkin. Yeah. Now, listen, after the 7th round, I was thinking, you know what? Those who predicted that Canelo's going to get stopped between rounds 9 and 11.
I was one of them.
They might. Well, I think that was the majority of the boxing insiders or hardcore fans or
you think so?
experienced boxing journalists. I think most people thought Canelo would be worn down to a late stoppage. I kept hearing round 10 as that sort of magic
one of
round.
them, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought he was big, strong, young enough, and ring savvy enough to go the distance. But after that 7th round, I'm thinking, nah, it just doesn't look good for the kid. He looks arm weary. He looks like he's run out of ideas, and he doesn't seem to have that will anymore to stand and trade with them. And that's how you get that respect from Golovkin. Doing the international broadcast or the online pay-per-view, I got to hear the corners between rounds, and I must say that both corners, Abel Sanchez and Eddie Reynoso, did a tremendous job in keeping their fighters focused but calm and also on track with the game plan. And Reynoso knew when to crack that whip. And I believe it was after the 9th round.
Going into
he
the
was
10th.
like,
Yeah.
you got to be a dog, man.
Yeah. You know,
you got to go
that
out
was the
there.
best round of the fight, the 10th round, I
He said,
thought.
you got to come out here and show him something. And I was thinking that same thing, because I was thinking, like, everyone's saying this is the round that Canelo's going to get knocked out in. And he comes out and he throws hard for the first minute of that round.
You know, if you take a look, going back to the judges, I know Adelaide Byrd is the big story. She's become this lightning rod. Here's the problem with Adelaide Byrd. This is not a bad night, as Bob Bennett said. There's been a lot of bad nights.
Yeah.
In fact, you could do a 30 for 30 on ESPN on her bad nights. I saw a video, and I didn't realize this, and I looked it up on BoxRec. They didn't have her score. I'm going to try to research this. Kenny Porter was interviewed after the fight, and he said, yeah, Adelaide Byrd, she had my son losing to Paulie Malignaggi till we knocked him out. You go back to that fight. That was one of the most lopsided physical destructions from the very beginning. I was at the fight where Chia Santana fought his heart out, probably lost by a couple of points to Jose Benavidez. Mrs. Byrd had it 10-0.
Right.
And
that was
Tom Rank last year before the Lomachenko-Walters fight said, we're going to respectfully try not to get her on the card. Bob Bennett bullied them. I asked Carl Moretti of Top Rank. I said, Carl, what was your guys' last straw with Mrs. Byrd? And he said, 118, 110, Magdalena over Donaire.
Right.
Okay, so
that fight was not lopsided.
Right. For the first 10 rounds, it was kind of in there now.
Yeah.
So people are going to blame Golden Boy as the lead promoter with the house fighter, and I get that. But she has a track record of being, quote, and again, excuse me for the term, batshit crazy, with everybody. She just may not be a good judge. In fact, she may be incredibly incompetent.
Right.
But here's my point. So then blame the regulators that keep assigning her.
Right.
It's on them.
They should know the officials that they assign. They should know their track record going in there. And when you're talking about a fight or an event like Canelo Triple G, the world is watching. You got a lot of eyeballs on that fight.
Just millions.
A lot of responsibility.
You want to represent the Nevada State Athletic Commission as a world-class entity. So you put out your best. You don't assign somebody to that fight that has a track record of questionable scorecards. You just don't do that.
Do you remember Hagler Hearns 1987, a fight that me and Doug disagree with, and I am a Hagler homer, so you know which way I went. But I thought that fight legitimately could have been 115, 113, either direction.
Right.
There was a guy by the name of Jojo Guerra,
Yeah.
who I believe had it like 118, 110, or 117.
No, it was
110.
118, 110.
And he gave 9 straight rounds, if I'm not mistaken, to Sugar Ray Leonard, and he quickly disappeared off the scene, I believe.
Right.
There's another case. Dalby Shirley gave 7 or 8 rounds straight to Eric Morales against Marco Antonio Barrera, the first fight.
And he had a history of questionable scorecards.
Yes, because surely he couldn't be serious with a lot of his cards. And I remember Mark Ratner benching him. I'll be honest with you, Bob Bennett, the BoxRec Bennett, I'll be honest, Mike, based on his history and his mindset, I don't think anything punitive is really going to happen to her.
Probably not, because that has been the history, as you mentioned. And it's not just her either, because if you remember the night of Kovalev-Ward, the rematch, we had Vic Draculich Baca fight between Guillermo Rigondeaux and Chucky Flores. So it's been, Nevada has been the consistent.
It's been the common denominator,
right? It's been, they allowed Floyd Mayweather without one professional boxing match. I'm sorry, Conor McGregor to fight Floyd Mayweather, the greatest fighter of our era, or one of them. So Nevada is just, they're going to do whatever the money tells them.
Okay,
it seems like. Right?
Now, with that said, I had a chance to speak to Tom Loeffler and Eric Gomez this week. The latest is this. They both agree, and they're not the fighters, but I get the sense Golovkin's on board, that they want the immediate rematch. Now, immediate can be a very loose term, and I think that means May. Let's be honest, right, Doug?
Yeah, well, Canelo's made it clear. He
Yeah.
fights on Cinco de Mayo weekend and Mexican Independence Day weekend.
Right.
And he makes enough money to where that's all he needs
we
to
don't,
fight.
as we like to say, don't have to throw him a benefit.
No.
Now, so with that said, Tom said if they commit to May, we're not going to have another fight. We'll comply with
Right.
the interim, no interim fights. Forget Cotto, forget it. All right. The question is, do you think there's a credibility problem that if you fight in the first week of May again, and let's say it's back at the scene of the crime, at the same venue, in the same jurisdiction, and let's say not AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas?
You know, boxing sets itself up for that ridicule if the officials get it wrong, and the officials have been getting it wrong, at least one of them, whether it's one of the official judges or the referee, they've been getting it wrong in big fights for the past couple of years since Bob Bennett's reign as the executive director. I wouldn't put a lot of trust in them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you what, going forward, I respect Canelo. When it comes to Canelo Alvarez, particularly fighting anywhere, but particularly in the state of Nevada, when he's in a fight where I think it's going to be a close competitive fight.
There's always that one judge.
Right. It's going to go the distance. I'm going to say, if I think the other guy can beat him, I'm going to say, yeah, I think this guy can beat him, but I'm not sure in Vegas. I have to say that.
C.J. Ross.
Or I have to
114.
predict a majority or split decision.
You know, I asked Freddie Roach yesterday, I go, boy, Canelo's hard to beat in Vegas, isn't he? And Freddie just said, in the United States. So maybe it's not just one jurisdiction.
Right. You know, Canelo, as much as we like the idea of AT&T Stadium hosting this event, because, you know, between 90 and 100,000 fans could actually be there and witness it, Canelo's kind of the king of Texas.
Sure he is.
Who sells more tickets in Texas than Canelo?
And they've had a notorious past.
Yes,
they've got a checkered past. They do.
Doug, looking at this fight historically, I wrote it the day after the fight for UCN Live. I thought it was a very good, if not great fight. It wasn't Hagler-Hearns.
No.
I'm not even so sure it was James Toney and Mike McCallum in 1991.
Right, it wasn't an instant classic.
Yeah,
no.
It was very good.
but
It was
it- but
entertaining. It was compelling.
It did delivered.
It did.
It was good enough that we want to see it again. And despite the results of the draw or whatever scorecard, I think most people would want to see it again. So the question then becomes, in the rematch, and let's say they age appropriately, no one necessarily falls off a cliff, but there's a natural progression of age. If they fought in 8-9 months, who would you guys favor in the rematch?
I slightly favor the younger man, Canelo.
I would
think
as well.
he's-
8 or 9 months from now? So
Yeah.
it's May, right? Yeah.
Right.
I would-
Canelo will still be 27.
And now he has the
Golovkin
experience.
will be 36.
He's
Right.
fought a real middleweight for once. I think he's going to get better acclimated to the weight.
Right.
Seeing as how he kind of took a break in the middle of that fight, obviously.
Yeah, don't you think he gets over certain mental
Absolutely.
hurdles? Like,
Absolutely.
okay,
Well,
I
and
know I
he's-
can weigh in at 160. I know I can be in a tough 12-round bout. I know I can survive against the baddest ass in the entire middleweight division. And I think Canelo's track record, he's shown that he's somebody who learns technically, and in terms of his ring ability, fight by fight. So he's gonna raise his game on that level as well.
Yeah, and Doug, you've talked about the physical plateau of Golovkin. I said this in my recent column. I think now there is a physical erosion. At that style at age 35 with the appropriate drug testing,
Right.
it is only natural. Now, he is still a formidable fighter. I think it's going to take a hell of a fighter on a hell of a night, willing to go through hell to beat him. But I think for the first time, there's an old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So for this whole time that we've seen Golovkin in the United States, he's been steamrolling people. So it wasn't broke. I think for the first time, Abel now really needs to get to Golovkin and make some adjustments.
I agree.
I've seen too many missed punches, leaving a lot on the table offensively, and for the first time really retool certain things. Not overhaul everything, but again, when you're knocking guys out easy, what can you really tell anybody? But I think there has to be now some coaching adjustments moving forward.
I agree. And if those adjustments aren't made, I think Canelo can win a decisive, legitimate decision.
I agree. That body attack needs to come back because that's the cornerstone, I think, of Golovkin's offense.
So there you have it. It was controversy. We were fit to be tied in Las Vegas. Gennady Golovkin retains his title with a draw over a very game, courageous Canelo Alvarez. We come back with more 10 count.